Jay Moss, great to see you. You're at the conference today.
Yes,
And the
conference
is, tell everybody.
Conference is Americans for Equal Share Parenting Capitals for Kids. We're here with the Far From Normal radio show, and we've got Pete McNeil who's here, and Jesse Weiner. Unfortunately, Bud was not able to make it. He has some physical issues, nothing serious, but he's taking care of it.
Yeah.
So we're pleased to be here, definitely, and representing the best that we can.
Wonderful, wonderful. So how did you start? You started the Far From Normal radio show.
Right.
Tell me about the beginning of that.
Well, the process all started, I was getting out of another group. Unfortunately, that didn't really do too well.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I decided that I wanted to do something completely different than what we had done. And I talked to Randy Davis and Neil Shelton. They offered me a spot on the Future of Our Children's Radio Network.
Right.
And the first person that I thought of to tag team partner with me was somebody who was upbeat, positive, empowering. And so I got a hold of Bud Vino right away. We clicked, but we wanted to do something that was not the normal radio show that everybody else was doing.
Right.
We wanted to do something that was completely different. So in order to kind of pay respect and homage to Neil Shelton, what he was doing with
Mayberry.
Yeah, Mayberry. So we decided that we were going to go ahead and name our show after the town that I lived in, which was Normal, Illinois. But the weird thing about
You're far from normal.
Right. The weird thing about that is nobody can associate with normal because normal's not really what we go through in the movement.
Right.
And so we wanted to name it something that made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And a lot of things that people go through are really far from normal.
Right.
So we
so far from normal that people think you're either crazy or delusional or making it up, or there's no way that happens.
That's exactly right. We've been so absolutely blessed and pleased that we've had such amazing guests on the show.
Yeah.
The guests and the viewership is really what make the show. We're just blessed to be able to do it.
Yeah. So let me ask one quick question here first. Now, you're ex-military, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I am.
And which branch did you serve in?
Served in the Army.
For how long?
3 years.
From when to when?
91 to 94.
Okay, so you weren't during the first Gulf War.
No. A lot of the things that I did were chaplain's assistant things.
Oh, got it. Okay. I was in from 89 through 93, but I remember because the worst. I was still in training. I had 2 years of training because language school, different intelligence school, stuff like that.
Exactly.
And then they sent me to Korea, and they modified my orders to 1997. And I'm like, I only have a 4-year enlistment. You're enlisting me, sending me out to 97.
Right.
But
exactly. My military background goes through the 18th Airborne Corps and the 82nd Airborne Corps.
Okay.
Supply support, logistics, those kind of things. And so my detail in the Army kind of helped lead me to doing some things in the movement because it was kind of a fortunate circumstance.
Right.
Where we deal with a lot of situations where it's suicide or suicide prevention, and some of the things that we're doing in the movement really translate to my background and some of those things. So it was a natural thing for me to do.
Right.
Even after 20 years of marriage,
it
was a natural kind of substance to go off of in order to help people. So
let me ask another question then. Military chaplain, you've talked about some of your background. Tell me about PTSD and how many people suffer from it, what you see, because there's a lot of misconceptions about PTSD, especially the people who love the veterans as they're fighting and they come back, but they go to family court and their military service gets used against them and they're told they're monsters because they have PTSD.
That's exactly right. Unfortunately, PTSD really, a lot of people try and use PTSD and they say, oh, I suffer from PTSD. Not necessarily completely the case. What you probably suffer from is legal abuse syndrome.
Exactly.
Because you're going to the court, you're rapidly going to the court, and every time you walk into court, you're losing. And so it weighs on you that you never want to go into court because of the fact that you know that you're going to lose before you ever walk into the courtroom.
Right.
PTSD is more the factor that something happened in your life that transpired that is so absolutely, completely awful and atrocious activity in which keeps you up at night, gives you nightmares, you can't sleep, you get hot sweats, cold sweats. It affects you physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. So it is something that completely changes your life.
Does it turn you into a monster?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, when I say monster, I mean a dangerous person. Does it turn you into a dangerous person?
A dangerous person, but in your mind, mentally, you know that you've got some issues that you need to take care of. But see, the thing about the military that is so fantastic and great is they have what's called a debriefing process.
Right.
And in that debriefing process, they help you.
Right.
They really go over things and they help to get you the help that you need to have. If you need someone to talk to, or you need a social worker, or you need a psychiatrist, or whatever it may be, they can easily find you one. And that is definitely what I would suggest. I would say, don't hold those emotions in.
Right.
If you feel those things, you feel that there's just something not right, it's not clicking right, you keep having these nightmares, these daydreams, these reoccurring dreams, seek out help. There's nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, the court does use it. The court has a problem with using disabilities against veterans. And it's unfortunate. A lot of the times we have 38 USC 511 that says the Secretary of the Department of Veteran Affairs shall make all decisions in veterans' cases with veterans' benefits. Unfortunately, these cases, the civil courts are bypassing federal law. So we have this, and we really need to get it before the new Secretary of the Department of Veteran Affairs in reference to this, because they should be upholding the law. That's what their job and their duty and their responsibility is. And so we will continue to reach out that way, try and talk to the Secretary of the Department of Veteran Affairs and work a relationship with those people.
Right.
It's all about building relationships, because if they see what's actually going on, they'll actually do something about it. But if they're just hearing the nonsense behind the scenes, or acting in an anger, or kind of a tirade type of circumstance, which a lot of people do with PTSD, there's certain outbreaks.
Right.
So if we come to them and build those relationships and kind of explain what we deal with and why we deal with it, and hey, here's a federal law that says that you're supposed to protect us.
Right.
We're hoping that that's the case, that they'll go in and do it.
Yeah. So you're almost saying that at the same time, tying this back into the legal abuse syndrome, you see veterans abused in courts and family courts by attorneys, more than the normal person, perhaps?
I would say we see it more among veterans. Unfortunately, there's a group called the Second Class Citizens that put out a report. They put one out a while back, but they put out this report that basically now finally states there's 36 veterans that commit suicide a day.
So it went up from 22.
Right.
It used to be 22.
It used to be 22. It's now 36.
This is amazing. Nobody talks about. I mean, when I hear the figures, I keep on saying, is it possible? Is it really true?
Yes, it's absolutely true. And among these statistics, they now state that it has gone down a little bit from their original estimate, but it's still 13 suicides a day among veterans that go through the family court system.
So the family court is directly responsible for the deaths, the suicides, the murders, whatever you want to call it, of veterans. And all the people that are rah, rah, hoorah, we're behind you all the way, and yet they don't speak up on behalf of veterans.
Yes.
And I've seen this happen, you start talking about these things with people, and it's funny how, I shouldn't say it's funny, you start talking about these things with people, and people, once they hear you start talking, they have a story.
Yes.
And it's happening to men, it's happening to fathers and mothers both.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the issue that we've run into now is even among those suicides that we're seeing mothers commit suicide that are veterans
right.
from the family court system as well. So
right.
It's not just fathers.
It's not just fathers.
Is it primarily because fathers are more apt to commit suicide? Sure, but we still are addressing this on an equality basis.
Absolutely.
It's it's more apt that a legislator will listen to a female's perspective a lot more than they'll listen to a male's perspective, unfortunately. But it just is that way because they still associate a mother with being the bonding factor to the child.
Yeah. So can you talk about, maybe you've seen this, can you talk about people who lose their children because, well, you've been on deployment and you're not around for them.
Right.
That's another thing. The Army, whichever service you serve for, they deploy you, and while you're gone, you know, your husband or your wife goes out, does whatever, files for divorce, and in all these no-fault states, the person who files first is always at an advantage. And then they say, then they make the accusations. And now you're serving your country, and you're losing your kids.
Exactly. Imagine this. I've heard the horror stories, and here's what we call them in the military. We call them Dear John letters, because it's exactly what it is. Dear John, I'm about ready to leave you. I'm filing for divorce, and they get it, and they get that letter overseas. Well, in that process, most likely the attorney has talked to the female, male, whoever it may be, that's still undeployed, you know, the spouse, and they're promising them the world, and they're saying, here's what you need to do, and you need to go in and you need to file an ex parte order for a order of protection, and once that happens, the other person is so far behind the 8 ball that it's basically you're 100 steps behind. By the time that person comes back from deployment, they're looking at the final order more than likely. Right,
and especially now if the person is on deployment, has some PTSD, and the protective order or the restraining order, either one, is upon them. I mean, now all of a sudden, we can't put the kids with that monster. In fact, that person who's fighting for the country is an unfit parent.
Well, correct. And the way that the courts see veterans is they see a veteran as someone that we have taken and we have trained to the utmost to be a killing machine. Okay, so
and we all know that's there are some
not necessarily true.
Right.
Yes, there are
by and large,
but we're still humans, and we still go through everything the same exact way. And the debriefing process that the military does really is so absolutely respectful to the individual because it allows them to really get into the process of I am a human being.
Right.
I'm not this killing machine. This is who I am.
Right.
I'm a family person. I need to take care of my family, and that debriefing process really helps the situation.
So I've seen as well. You know, I used to be overseas as a missionary after my military service, and we worked a little bit with Samaritan Purse, Franklin Graham's organization. I love the fact that he stands up for people, he stands up for the truth, but he also has an aspect of his ministry in which he deals with service people that are coming back, and especially marriage restoration. And it is a shame to me that you have the people that go out there at the request of the country, and then they get deprived, stripped of rights, and they have nothing that they can do as they watch their family get lost. They may have seen friends killed. It may have been a regular deployment with not too much going on, but it just seems so hypocritical and something that we as people, and I mean, I know you've come from the service, I've come from the service. My service was a lot different than yours. I was in intelligence versus the chaplaincy, but we all have different stories, but we see it happening again and again and again.
Absolutely, we do. And what we find out through going through this as a veteran is that not only are they doing this, but disabled veterans.
Disabled
veterans are among the worst that go through the family court system. The reason I say that really is in depth. A disabled veteran, even if, let's say you have a 90% disabled veteran, they're making or getting a benefit of about $2,000 a month.
Right.
If you have 2 children, you're paying upwards of $1,300, $1,400 a month. So you're trying to tell a disabled veteran they have to live on less than $500 a month.
Yeah.
And that's just not possible in today's economy, unfortunately. And so we see...
And those benefits are protected by federal law,
They are protected, but unfortunately, in order to bypass the system, what they do is they create a child support order. Once the money comes in and it hits the bank account, now it's your money. They can say you're responsible for paying this child support. So they bypass the system is basically what they've done.
A legal loophole of some sort.
Exactly.
Again,
meaning they can't put in a order in order to garnish those funds, but once you have those funds, unfortunately that's the case. And the reason I say that this is so absolutely horrible and atrocious for veterans, I myself have been, unfortunately, I've had to go through being homeless for 2 years. I slept on a park bench in Decatur, Illinois, unfortunately, and there are literally thousands just like me who've gone through this. Fortunately for me, I've recovered. Many have not.
And that's the thing. If you recover, you hear these people say, well, whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Exactly. But what they forget is that some people get killed in the process.
Yes.
Some people get devastated and they never recover.
Never, yeah.
And so what would you say to others? You know, you're talking about stuff that maybe people haven't thought about. How can they help? What can they do to bring awareness or to help in these situations? I mean, as you know, I've been fighting for the repeal of forced divorce, unilateral divorce. I think it's completely unjust, unconstitutional, it's immoral, unethical. There's a whole bunch of problems, and that to me is the head of the snake to cut off. Right. But anyway, nevertheless, until that head gets cut off, we have the whole snake to deal with.
Exactly.
What would you suggest?
As far as a suggested outcome and how we go about that, I believe it's contacting the Secretary of the Department of Veteran Affairs as much as you possibly can, number one. Number two, there are several other groups out there like Second Class Citizens, amazing people. They can definitely lead you to statistics, get you different help out there.
Secondclasscitizens.org, I think, right?
Yes, absolutely. And then there are also several different resources out there. One of them that helped me is there's a program set up for service members and their families through the Salvation Army. So
really?
That was a great program for me. And then there's also in your local town or your county, usually there's what's called a Veterans Assistance Commission.
Okay.
They are very good at kind of helping with some bills and helping get you some groceries and things like that.
Yeah.
Those things all get you back on your feet because you can transfer what you do have in resources into your case a lot of the times. And I believe really we need to help and we need to ask a lot of our attorneys out there to help do pro bono work for veterans specifically, because there just are not enough out there. I was fortunate enough to get a hold of one after 10 years of being in this movement. So 10 years waiting and going through the system in order to find one person is unrealistic.
Right.
And maybe if we're talking 2 years, that's a possibility, but there are a lot of good attorneys who are fathers' rights attorneys that are out there that are helping. And if they could just take on some pro bono cases, there are definitely tax write-offs. They can definitely help that organization as well. So it's mutually beneficial for an attorney to give a little bit of their time. So
let me tell you something. We had a meeting with the Attorney General in December of last year, and we were talking about this thing with veterans at that point in time. Now, the Attorney General came into the meeting. He was supposed to be there for 3 hours. He was there for less than half an hour, didn't say a word, left. His associate deputy, he got fired. Well, resigned the following week. He resigned. You know what his solution was for this situation? Well, we'll just get them a job. We'll just get them, this is, and like you've said, you're dealing with things, you are disabled. Is that from your military service?
That's from my military service, yep. Unfortunately, it's taken its toll over 20 years of being out of the military. When you leave the military and you have a certain physical attribute that you can no longer do, those things over time become worse and worse and worse because of the central nervous system. Then you've got muscular, and then you've definitely got arthritis that sits in on top of that. So those things continue to get worse over time. Veterans don't necessarily get better, but they are very, very good at the VA about pushing medication. And what we need as veterans is we need our doctors to understand and know that, yes, we are veterans, and yes, we are disabled, but we love to work, yes, so please get us the operations and things that we need, rather than pushing prescription drugs.
I've seen that, and I mean,
yes.
I have much more limited experience than you by far, but when you see this stuff and talk with the people, I'm just appalled. The other thing I was going to mention when you were talking about different people to contact, most states have a Veterans Affairs Subcommittee or something like that.
Yes.
And those are people that you can talk to because they are people that really are trying to help the veterans. And I think that what happens so many times, I mean, veterans are strong people by and large. They have to be strong because of what they go through. But then to have to open up to somebody, it's hard for them to do so because number one, there's the embarrassment, there's a shame. Number two, what if I break down and cry? I'm supposed to be this tough guy. You know, how can I admit that I need help when I've been the one who's been doing all of these things, standing up for our country? And, you know, there's just so many dynamics there. But I think that...
well, yeah, the best advice that I can give, not only to veterans, but everybody that's out there, is to handle these situations. Don't come into them with an anger or an emotional factor. Come into them as if this is a business transaction, because really that's how the courts see it. This is a business transaction. This is, say for instance, if you're a sports star and you're a LeBron James and you're out there and you're trying to negotiate a contract with somebody and you say, hey, this is my worth because I put up these numbers, I can do these things. You know, I'm this good of a parent. You know, I've done these things. I've taken care of my kids. I've done everything that I've been asked to do as a parent. Why is it okay that I'm okay enough of a parent to be a parent one night a week and every other weekend, but I'm not good enough of a parent to have the kids 50-50? That just does not make sense. Unfortunately, we have these issues there with the Bar Association. Veterans definitely have the issues going back to a Supreme Court case called Rose versus Rose, unfortunately. However, there have been a lot of cases since.
When was the Rose versus Rose?
Rose versus Rose, I believe, was 1983, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought it was a while ago.
Several cases since then. So you're talking about a case that's approximately 35 years old or so. So it's unfortunate that a lot of veterans are going through these things. But there's been Howell versus Howell that has overruled those situations with 42 U.S.C. 659 H1BIII. Go look it up. That says no Title 38 benefits are for child support directly. It does take you back to another subsection, but in that subsection it talks about how retirement pay is figured in, but even with that, Howell overruled that last year, actually.
So, Jay, plug your radio station. Tell us about it, and, you know.
Sure, the Far From Normal radio show is every Tuesday night, and it's live on Facebook. We do record the broadcast, and we'll definitely be putting it on in the future, on the audio to the future of our children's radio network as well, but you can definitely find us on Facebook. We hope to build a website very soon that should have all of our broadcasts on there, but right now, Facebook is our primary platform. We've done in between 3 to 5K viewers for the last 5 weeks, I believe.
Wow.
So we're getting the news out there. And when we started this show, Bud and I said, if we make a difference in one person's life, that's enough.
You know, I know you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, but there seems to me to be change that's coming.
Yes, and it's coming very, very rapidly and very, very quickly. A lot of people are working with other people now. And we try and work as much as possible and try and intermix as much as we possibly can with every group out there. You'll see that on the Far From Normal radio show. You'll see at the end of our broadcast, we put out there who is actually on our board of directors. So you'll see Americans for Equal Share Parenting, you'll see Illinois Fathers for Equality, you'll see Dads Can Too, you'll see Melissa Isaac very soon.
She's great.
And we're absolutely thrilled and excited to have those people on the board of directors. They're people who, they're active in doing things out there, but they're not involved in any of the drama that goes on within the movement, because that's all emotions. And we need to take emotions out of the equation and get down to business, because now's the time to get things done.
Yeah, well, change is coming. Thanks so much, Jay. You've been one of the leaders. Thank you.
Thank you.